Good. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this April 17th, 2018 meeting of the Sustainability Commission of the City of Palm Springs. We are delighted that you are here, and I have asked Commissioner David Friedman if he would lead us in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Dan, if you would do the roll call, please.
Thank you. Chair Jackson.
Present.
Vice Chair Clark.
Present.
Commissioner Baker.
Here.
Commissioner Friedman.
Here.
Commissioner Futterman.
Here.
Commissioner Gauthier.
Present.
Commissioner McCann.
Present.
Commissioner Santora.
Here.
Commissioner Spry.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
And Student Representative Dara Shea. Here. Commissioner Goins has called in absent.
So we have almost a full house. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. The agenda was emailed to all of you and posted last Thursday per city regulations. I'm not aware of any changes to the agenda that we need to make tonight. So if not, is there a motion that we accept the agenda as presented? I think so moved by Commissioner Baker and second by Commissioner Santora. All in favor say yes. Yes. Opposed say no. And we have an agenda for the evening. Thank you. So, staff comments. Jay, anything from you? And I don't see anybody else.
Thank you,
no
Mr.
other
Chair.
city managers?
No additional comments in addition to what's already going to be reported on in the agenda.
Okay, great, thank you. And I don't see any representatives from other commissions that are here to speak. Dara Shea, is anything you need to report to us tonight? Okay, well, we are moving right along. That's great. At each meeting of the Sustainability Commission, there is time set aside for the public to address the commission on topics that are related to our area of responsibility within the city. So if there is anyone who wishes to speak, you can come forward to the empty chair, occupy that, press the button so that we can hear you and you can be recorded. If you would please state your name and your city of residence, and you will have 3 minutes, provided I can remember how to work the machine.
I hope they'll be under 3, but good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Jim Flanagan. I live in South Palm Springs, and I did address you last session about some bicycle issues, and I was glad to see that those recommendations were adopted and that actually went through in council, so I was happy to see that. There was a second item that came up during last month's discussion, which was something in my purview of what I've worked on as an advisor to the Public Utilities Commission in Hawaii, and that was concerning recycling issues and some refuse issues. And I tried to relay some of that information, but I wasn't able to speak after the public comment period last month. So I want to say now that I've had experience in Hawaii working with Covanta, and what Hawaii does is they now incinerate 100% of their garbage. So that's 3,000 tons a day of garbage. It's for a city of 900,000, for a state of 900,000 people. And the plant has been in operation since 1990. And what it does is it takes the entire refuse stream. It automatically separates out, pulls all the metal and the glass out, and incinerates everything else. And it provides 10% of the state's energy. So it's something I tried to share with a couple of folks here, and I'd be happy to pass along that, but I've worked in Hawaii with Public Utilities Commission with these guys, and so I know a lot of the internal scuttlebutt, and it's been really successful for those guys. I think the only real problem they've had is they don't have enough trash right now in Hawaii, so there's a contractual hiccup right now going on with the trash supply, which they can't get more, and they can't really import trash. But other than that, it's highly successful, and I know it would be a huge operation, but it meets the refuse problems, it meets the recycling problems, and it provides a huge amount of energy. So it's something to consider. And if you'd like, I'd be happy to pass along some of my information through Joe, maybe to the rest of the commissioners if you'd like. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Commissioners, are you interested in that information? Okay, all right. The best way, Jim, for you to get that is if you could send that to Dan DeGarmo at the city. Dan can give you his card. As commissioners can't communicate with all the other commissioners per the Brown Act, so if you send it to Dan, he will send it out to everybody, and then we will have it. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in public comment? Seeing no movement to the microphone, we'll declare public comment closed. The meeting minutes of March 20th were sent to you, and then there were, I think, a number of small corrections and edits, and so you did get a subsequent clean edition. Is there a motion that we accept those minutes as corrected? So moved from Commissioner Gauthier, a second from Commissioner Spry. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed say no. And we have approved our minutes. And Dan and Jay, thank you again for your work in making that happen. Gary Calhoun is here.
Good evening. I'll be brief. I only have two things. The shred and e-waste event is this Saturday. It's going to be held in the front parking lot of City Hall, and it'll be held in conjunction with Palm Springs Disposal's spring cleanup as well. So we expect much more attendance at this one. That's been the case in past. And the other thing I have for you is that I've been in contact with Miss Susan Hilzebeck. She's the vice principal at Raymond Cree Middle School. And she contacted actually Daniel, and she's interested in what they can do about recycling at that school. So hopefully we'll be working with them.
So Gary, is that's a contact that you'll follow up on, or that's something you need members of the waste reduction folks to
No, I'll
help you
follow
with?
up. I was just
Okay.
keeping you informed.
Okay, great. Is that it?
That's it.
What do I do with my dead computer screen if I'm not going to be in town on Saturday?
If you can,
Hold on to it till this fall?
yeah.
Our next one will not be, we will not have another, that's really my leading question. We won't have another electronic recycling event until the
October.
fall,
Yeah,
October.
the third
Okay.
Saturday in October.
Third Saturday in October. Okay, all right. Okay, any questions for Gary? Yes,
I do.
Commissioner Baker.
I was in, what city was it in? DC. And I spoke with some of our, Diane Feinstein and some of our other local legislators regarding the issue of trash and how we're running out of space. And if there was some more information, a white paper or something, I would like to forward that to them, because they were kind of like, what? What do you mean there's no space? It was like a new issue to them completely.
Daniel, do you have another copy of that, or there was about an 8 or 10 page paper that was done? I don't know
I'll
if you
get it
received
to
that or
you.
not.
Okay, super. So we'll, yeah, the document that's you sent electronically to us about the issues with the
Right,
recycling. in
that
China.
Chris Cunningham presented.
Okay,
yeah.
perfect. Okay. Any other questions for Gary? All right, thank you, Gary. All right, we are at old business, and the first item is the Ad hoc Subcommittee on Film Festival Programs, and you just got a report in nice, bright goldenrod paper from Commissioners Gauthier and Futterman. So we're happy to hear from you.
I don't know if Jennifer had a chance to review our report before the meeting, so I'll go ahead and report on it. We were looking into utilizing the Wild and Scenic Film Festival packaging to do a Sustainability Commission Film Festival later this year. Jennifer and I attended one of those events in Riverside in February, and then we met with the executive director of the organization that put that on afterwards to kind of debrief and get their experience from it. Their bottom line on that was that there were some pitfalls in terms of film selection and some of the films being available free on the internet, but with that caution, they do intend to repeat the event next year with that same company. And I wanted to point out, Jennifer had noted that the Friends of the Desert Mountains are also holding a Wild and Scenic Film Festival this Saturday at the UCR campus in Palm Desert from 3 to 6:30. That event is free of charge. Anybody that's interested in going and seeing it, to see what those events are like and how they're run is welcome to join us. Jennifer and I are going to try to attend it. We haven't had a chance to knock heads about carpooling yet, but we will attend that, and then I think based on that, come back in May and report on how that went, if we learned anything new from that. And then on the report, I've outlined some next steps. If you all green light moving forward with the film festival, the next steps that we would do to prepare for something maybe in December of this year. Any questions?
So you're looking at as early as December of
2018.
Of 2018, okay? Commissioners, questions of Commissioners Gothier and Futterman?
Have we worked with the film festival to see if, because, I mean, that's right at the beginning of their season for the film festival. Are we trying to do anything in conjunction with Palm Springs Film Festival?
We haven't reached out to them or did anything, but we're open to it.
I mean, this would be in many ways, a significantly different kind of event, I think, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
My question is really more in terms of
Okay.
venue and logistics and stuff, since they have that pretty much down to a
Okay.
science. They have a volunteer portal. It's a very well-run machine.
right, yes. So there could be some logistical expertise they could lend us if they're willing, absolutely. Other questions? All right. Thank you. So we'll keep this on the agenda under old business for the May meeting as well. All right. Our second item in old business is our study session with Council Member Jeff Kors, who is our assigned liaison from the council to the Sustainability Commission. So since our last meeting, we've confirmed with all of you as commissioners the best date, and also with Councilmember Kors for next Monday, which is April 23rd, 5 to 7 o'clock. However, not in this location. We will be at the Wellwood Murray Library downtown. It's Palm Canyon Drive and Tahquitz. And there is a very nice community room there. We'll have a few little snacks and some water to make it a little bit more of a festive occasion. So just to let you know, the agenda, I don't have a copy of it. Oh, it's up there. Oh, perfect. I wasn't looking up on the screen. Great. This is the draft agenda. It has not yet been vetted by city staff. But what you see in item B is essentially what we would do. We would hear from Councilmember Kors on any priorities that he sees coming from council. We would, together as a group, talk about what we have been doing, what we've accomplished, and what some future initiatives might be. Item 3 is really then just sort of a free-for-all discussion with Councilmember Kors. And then finally, if we have time and if staff can have some documents ready, we could maybe get some previews on budget for where we are as we're ending this fiscal year and what fiscal year 18 and 19. We'd only do that if we have time for that agenda item. So it's a pretty simple agenda. The real objective is to have a conversation with Councilmember Kors. It is a public meeting, so it will be posted. We could have members of the public there, but we'll have a little bit freer discussion. There would not be, we don't anticipate having any motions or taking any reportable action other than identifying what might be some priorities for the commission. The other thing that you got from Dan through me was a copy of an old document that listed some projects that we had done in each of our subcommittee categories. And I just thought rather than, so that Jeff has a framework for our work, if we could update that, and then we'd have that emailed to all of you and to Jeff by next Monday, so that that could be a basis for our discussion. So Dan says he's already heard from a number of you. It's kind of a quick turnaround. We'd like for you to get that to Dan by end of workday tomorrow, so that he has Thursday as his last day of work to get that document put together and then emailed out to us by end of his day on Thursday. But if you can do that, that would be great. And that'll just help us all have a little bit more of a coordinated discussion, I think. Vice Chair Clark, anything else we need to say? Questions, commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Santora.
Just a question on that, because I know some of us are new and did not take part in developing that list. I know for one, I've got some interest in developing a new area. I've spoken with Jay already. Is that appropriate to add to the list or just bring it up in conversation? Or what are your suggestions on it?
I think Dan could have a list, have a section that says other / possible / brainstorming, and we put it in. And certainly if it's something that is kind of unique to your area, include which commissioner submitted or requested it. Sure. I think part of what we want to do is we certainly want to hear from Councilmember Coors if he's got things that he's seeing coming up in council that we are likely to be assigned. But also, if we give him a pretty long menu of things, he may say, I think there could be the council could be warmed to this, this, and this, and he might say, he might say, this could be a lower priority for council action. So that might help us out. I mean, in some ways, there's not a lot of point in us working on a project that ultimately wouldn't, if it requires council action, that they wouldn't support. So we might as well sort of figure it out. But I think that'd be fine. Long answer to a short question. What else? Other comments about Monday? I know there was not a night, as we were trying to sort out Monday and Tuesday, there wasn't a night that everybody could be present. So I know we're going to miss Jen, right? No. Yep. We'll miss you on Monday night. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. We are at item 3 in old business, the report that you received on milkweeds for Monarchs.
Actually, there were several things that I wanted to report about the Milkweed for Monarchs project. Christine Hammond and I, who are the ad hoc subcommittee for the Milkweed project, have done a number of things. First off, we've had a booth at the farmers market now twice, and also at the 1PS picnic, where we had information about the monarch butterfly project, and we also had a sign-up sheet for people who are interested in getting some of the desert milkweed plants. Christine has ordered a number of plants which we're going to make available to individuals who are interested, so we've been taking names at the booths at the events that we've been at. We also were at the butterfly block party that was hosted by the DWA a couple of weeks ago. In addition to that, we had a meeting with Stacy Schaefer to talk about places within the city and common areas where we might plant the desert milkweed. She was very open to it, and our priorities right now are for putting milkweed at Ruth Hardy Park, outside the dog park, and outside the library and other places at Sunrise Park. And speaking of the library, we met with Julie Warren, who is in charge of developing programs for the library, and she gave us information about what it would take to plan a lecture, an evening lecture sometime next fiscal year at the library. So we're expecting to move out on that relatively soon. And finally, a couple months ago, this group voted to recommend to the mayor and city council that the mayor take the National Wildlife Foundation's Monarch Pledge, which just makes some of the activities that we do for the butterflies a little bit more official. And as you saw in the packet that Dan sent out, that request to the city council is on the agenda for the city council meeting tomorrow night. It's part of the consent calendar, but the request is that they that the mayor or a designee sign the Monarch pledge, the mayor's pledge. Any questions?
So Jay, since this is on the council agenda as a part of the staff report, and we voted on this in February, there's no action that we need to take on it tonight, is there?
No action.
Okay, all right, that's what I thought. Great. Don't see any other questions? Okay, we are done with old business. We are into new business. And item one, the first two items relate to issues about smoking, clean air, and tobacco use. And the first item is one that I wanted us to put on the agenda for tonight, a discussion about the retail licensing program in Riverside County for retail outlets that sell tobacco. Palm Springs is one of a very few municipalities in Riverside County that have not adopted the Riverside County Ordinance, which provides for a license for those retail establishments. So I wanted us to talk about it, and why don't, just so we can talk about it and talk about it officially, would someone like to make the motion that is suggested in our agenda?
I would like to move that we open this up for discussion.
Okay, so you'll move that we support the tobacco retail licensing
License.
ordinance for the city of Palm Springs?
That's correct.
Okay, as outlined by Riverside County. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, a couple of seconds. Vice Chair Clark and Commissioner Sprite. Good, all right. So, the discussion is officially before us. Comments? Yes, Commissioner Friedman.
Never been clear to me. I understand that actually the enforcement would be done with the county. So how does the city, it's a legal matter, forgive me because I'm going to go all lawyer on you tonight on these smoking things. How does this get implemented in Palm Springs? Is it an actual ordinance? Is it a resolution? So we just take does Palm Springs City Council take the ordinance that you said and make it a city ordinance, or is simply a resolution that adopts the county ordinance? Because I understand that this is actually a county, the county will then enforce this program. It's not a city enforcement, is that correct?
That is correct. It is a county regulation. So it's up to our city council to decide how they care to incorporate that into the city. We are just asking, we're sort of gently guiding them in the direction, saying we would like to somehow incorporate this into existing legislation for the city of Palm Springs.
I think, now we have Paul and Bob here who also are in the audience and have experts if we need to call on them. I think, Commissioner Friedman, that the county wants municipalities to adopt their ordinance verbatim, and it simply allows, and Commissioner Baker, see if this is your understanding also as an attorney, it allows the county then to be the enforcement agency within our municipality. So then the county requires the licensing fee, which supports the costs of enforcement, and the enforcement is managed by the county.
Correct.
So I think in the end, the city doesn't have either an expense or an enforcement responsibility or obligation, but it simply allows the county to do that process within our city limits. It's already in all unincorporated areas and all unincorporated municipalities, and then other municipalities that have already adopted the ordinance.
That is correct.
Okay.
So this
Does that help?
a little bit, it's still
Okay.
not clear. I guess it would be some form of amendment to the municipal code, but it would refer to refer to. I'd be interested in seeing perhaps Paul and Bob, or you guys, Carl, Commissioner Baker, can come up with some other city ordinance, because it's a little bit of, because it refers to the county, exactly how it's done, whether it's just simply an ordinance that copies this directly, or it's downloaded into the municipal code. As we'll get to, there's a format for at least how Palm Springs does its ordinances, and this is, the county does it one way and the city does it a different way. So it's, it's just sort of a procedural matter of understanding that I don't have any, because we've discussed it at 1 PS, so I'm familiar with the substance. So this is just a question of what our, I guess our motion is: supports a taxable resale licensing ordinance, assuming that it's, it's sort of the county ordinance.
I think-
Adoption of the county ordinance is, I think, what we're talking about here.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And so it's how it would happen mechanically, I don't think, that isn't necessarily our concern.
Correct.
I think our discussion is whether or not we support the spirit of that regulation and would join with other city entities in 1PS or any other groups that are also supporting it. Yes, Jay?
Perhaps giving the council an option as to adopt the county ordinance verbatim versus the city taking some other means of incorporating something very similar, but not necessarily exactly the same. Implementation, I think there would be a lot of logistical questions as to how that would work, particularly with the enforcement. It was just mentioned, we have our own police force. Would county sheriffs make their way into Palm Springs specifically for that purpose? I don't know. And so I think that there's probably a lot of discussion to happen, particularly with the logistics and how to adopt something like that. So perhaps the spirit and giving some options might be helpful to the council.
I would prefer that, because I do have that question of exactly how you deal with the jurisdictional. So I don't know whether that's a friendly amendment to the motion, but that's exactly, it isn't necessarily, at least it seems to me, a verbatim. I think it would need some more work. So I perhaps make a friendly motion for Commissioner Baker with the council and city attorney, having the options of determining how it actually be implemented within the city limits.
So to understand you correctly, Commissioner Friedman, if I were to provide next month a punch list of logistical issues such as enforcement, conflict of laws, et cetera, would that satisfy your curiosity?
That's fine, but I don't have any problem with voting on it, subject to basically that the council do that. I am interested on that, just as because that's something that I'm interested in, but I understand the motion to be largely about the substance as opposed to the procedure, and I'm fine with that. But I do want to say that at least our motion can be a little bit more open-ended, because it may not necessarily be the county ordinance word for word.
And so I think as chair, what I am hearing from Commissioner Friedman is a request from you as the maker of the motion for this friendly amendment.
Yes.
And so you accept the friendly amendment, and just for the sake of it, I'll go to Commissioner Spry as the second. Do you also agree to the friendly amendment? Okay, all right. So pardon me. Oh, okay. Clark, okay, do you agree?
Yes.
We have agreement from everybody that spoke. So I think we have, we have amended the motion per Commissioner Friedman.
What is the amendment?
Would you restate that, Commissioner Friedman?
The amendment would be for the council to determine support, the substance, or it would be the motion, like going to that, as supports a tobacco resale license ordinance for the city of Palm Springs. I would say, as opposed to as proposed, I would probably say based on the Riverside County ordinance to be implemented in Palm Springs as best determined by the city attorney, city manager, and city council.
Is that helpful?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yeah, because my comment would be that this ordinance seems to support sting operations, and as such, I would not support this ordinance.
Okay, great.
And also, per my comment last month, I did speak to a mental health professional who did confirm my understanding that there are conditions that smoking does create dopamines that I'll just put it this way. I think that we could be exacerbating a homelessness problem by this. So as much as I dislike smoking, I don't think I can support this ordinance. So.
Right. Commissioner Baker.
Just as a point of information, so we bifurcated the issue. This is only talking about the retail sales. It's only really geared towards minors purchasing tobacco products.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Right, and so that, I think that, yeah, and that may be obscured by some of the length of all the documents. This is about trying to prevent underage purchase of tobacco, and.
But am I correct in the
It,
sting component?
they do use decoys.
Just like alcohol.
They use decoys in the same way that decoys are used in liquor stores to prevent underage purchase. So, and I suspect the idea is that if you come in and you know, they don't ask for an ID, and you are 17 or under, I guess it's under 21, then you would be cited for that. So
Okay.
decoys are being used, but it's to focus on underage persons.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. This is exactly the discussion we need to have and want to have, is so that we understand what this is about. And also, we don't have to vote on this tonight. We can, I just want to give you all your options. We can table the motion and revisit it next month. And it can be a part of our discussion with Councilmember Coors. Well, it will be on the list with Councilmember Coors Monday night as well. So we have options on how we want to deal with it tonight. Other questions about the retail licensing ordinance? Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Santoro.
Just one, and forgive me because I wasn't here at the last meeting. I'm not sure how this even came to us, but this is clearly a law enforcement issue. I'm just curious why it's here and why we're vetting this, because that's not in our, as far as I know, jurisdiction.
Well, actually, it was a discussion in the Sustainability Commission a couple of years ago, because it's a health and wellness issue. Underage smoking tends to be significantly addictive, and smoking is a public health issue. And so we had a brief discussion of it a couple of years ago in the health and wellness area, but there was not, it wasn't council support for this ordinance at that time. So just like beekeeping and waste reduction issues, everything starts somewhere. And so this is also percolating through some other city groups. And so if we support it, it would be one more voice. If we don't support it, our voice would be absent. Other questions? Unless there's a motion to table, I'll call for a vote. Since we've had a motion and second in discussion. Okay. Well.
But she seconded it, I'm sure.
Well, okay. Well, she could, if we're close, we'll count her vote when she comes. So any other questions or discussions on discussion items on this? All in favor say, or let's, since this would be better in case there is a closer vote. Please raise your hand if you're in support of this motion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if you are opposed, 1. And if you abstain, 1. And at this point, we'll have to call Jessica an abstention as she is out of the room, so two abstentions, so she can change her vote. Oh, and you're not a voting member anyway, you have voice but not vote.
Yeah.
Dara, thank you. Okay, so motion passes, and we'll add our commission name to other groups, and we will have this on the list to talk about with Councilmember Coors, and can also, and hear any, and it'll also be a good chance for him to give us a sense about what concerns or questions he might have as a council member as well. All right, thank you. Item 2 is continuing discussion on the proposed ordinance regarding clean air, smoking, and tobacco use in the city of Palm Springs. This is a different issue. Commissioner Baker, if you want to just kind of give a capsule comment.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we bifurcated the issue. The first segment was simply to focus on sales of tobacco products to underage minors. The second segment deals with the actual physical smoking and the prohibition on the location of where one may ingest cigarettes. As it stands now, the only place that you would be allowed to smoke would be in a single-family residence in your own, well, it doesn't have to be your property, but in a single-family residence or in the backyard. Communal apartments, condos, hotels, etc., that do not already have their own signed existing smoking regulations would fall under the prohibition that you would not be able to smoke in a common area, say outside of your apartment building. And that goes as well as to parks and pools and public walking down the sidewalk, parking lots, you name it.
Questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Friedman.
Okay, once again, the lawyer in me takes over. Couple of things as a format, and I would be happy to work with you, Commissioner Baker, to reformat this into the city ordinance. There is already a chapter in the city, which is largely Chapter 610 of the Municipal Code. So this would essentially be a repeal and replace of that chapter. There are some provisions that we would have to look at to see if these need to go in there. I looked at that chapter before I came here. It's largely preempted already by, it was from 1986, and most of it is largely preempted by state law. So it's on the books, but not enforced because it's largely, so it definitely needs a repeal and replace, so that's not a problem. The one area that I'm probably, and you know, obviously Councilmember Coors may give us some input on that, is the private right of action. I had not seen that. I don't believe that's elsewhere in any other provision of the municipal code. I'm sort of not aware of any other provision of the municipal code. So I was wondering, do other cities, this presumably came from some other cities' ordinance, so does Pasadena or other cities actually have private right of action in that? Because that's a rather large step, and I could understand, particularly in our business community, that may cause some heartburn.
Yes.
And I guess the question is, how important is that for the rest of this to sort of leave that potential exposure there? So I do have some concerns. I clearly support the substance as I did for the other provision, but if the goal is to get this through City Council, that perhaps might be raise some concerns. So is that something you can address, Commissioner Baker?
With Commissioner Jackson's permission, I'd like to punt that over to one of our experts who have worked on the other cities. I know it's Pasadena, some up north, Santa Monica. They may have that specific information on private right of action, which I don't know off the top of my head.
Paul or Bob, would one of you like to come forward and respond? And so, and would one of you lawyers explain that phrase?
Yes, sorry about that.
Types,
yeah,
please?
sorry about that. A private right of action. Right of action. So normally, for example, the tobacco retail permit that we just discussed provides for, in that specific document, county enforcement. So if there are violations, the county can then impose fines. For example, you're caught selling tobacco to somebody who's under 21. This, in addition to city administrative fines, and they are provided for here, would also give somebody who doesn't like cigarette smoke the right to go sue, for example, a business owner or a location where actually smoking has occurred, saying, well, I walked in and you were smoking, I saw people smoking, and you're not allowed to do that. So it creates a right of individuals to sue. A legislation that you can use, federal legislation where that does occur, is the Americans with Disabilities Act. So if there is, for example, a location where there aren't, handicapped access, a person who wishes to have that, who's been said that I've been injured, can then sue the business saying, I'm going to sue you. So it is in addition to the administrative. So it does create legal exposure to businesses operating in the city, in addition to potentially be sued, in addition to any enforcement action, fines that the city can impose. And as I said, I am not aware of any other area in our municipal code where there actually is a private right of action. I have not seen that, obviously. I do attend, as Bob and Paul do, our code enforcement, public works meetings, and this would be a sui generis provision in our municipal code if we were to add that.
Okay, so just so you know what our, Commissioner Baker, what specifically is your question of our experts? We've talked a lot. Let's be sure we know what the question is.
If other municipalities have accepted this private right of action clause.
I can't answer that question right off the top of my head. I can answer by saying that this has been reviewed by several attorneys from Change Labs, which is a nonprofit organization that has reviewed tobacco ordinances throughout the state of California. That's the best I can answer that right now, Commissioner.
While you're here,
I'm here.
Also, and just so that it's on the recording, please state your name.
Oh, I'm Robert Heinbaugh. I'm a citizen here in Palm Springs.
Yeah, thank you. So Bob,
Yeah.
where else is this draft ordinance working its way? Am I to understand that you've already been in discussion with council members about this as well?
Yes, one council member has had this on his desk for probably over a year now that I know of. And we're working on it through the Ecology Committee with 1PS.
Okay.
We've approached, of course, obviously here with sustainability. We've also gone with the Human Rights Campaign. It's HRC, Human Rights Commission.
Okay.
We've spoken with both the police department. We got a verbal approval from the police chief, and we got a verbal approval from the fire chief. However, they both went to the city attorney, who said that they can't do that in writing because that's a political issue, and neither department could get involved in that for political purposes.
Sure.
So that's just verbal, and you didn't hear me say that.
Right. No. Okay, and so I just wanted commissioners to know that it's already before at least one council member, one subcommittee of 1PS is discussing the issue, and potentially the Human Rights Commission.
Right.
Is discussing it.
And that's just here.
Right.
Before we came here today, we were with the Riverside County Tobacco Coalition, and we got support from the American Lung Association there. We're getting support from several allies within the Tobacco Coalition, Riverside County. So we've got those people that are working with us also.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we didn't have any action proposed tonight, but just a chance for continuing discussion and questions. So commissioners, any other questions of Bob or Commissioner Baker? Yes, Dara Shea.
I just had a question about the media exposure. So how will people find out that this is a new law, because there are a lot of smokers, and will there be warnings, or for those that are still smoking in public areas?
Well, that's a long way down the road yet, because we have to get groups to approve this whole process, this ordinance, this clean air ordinance. And in that process, we have to go through, if for example, it goes through 1PS, we have to have study sessions where it's open to the public and people.
And the business community.
Pro and con, we have to have all that kind of stuff. There has to be, in those study sessions, there would be, I'm sure there's going to be media coverage in some way, shape, or form, so that there would be that kind of exposure. Given that it would move forward and ultimately pass with the city, then there would have to be signage that would go up, for example. And in the signage that we have in the city parks right now, one of the reasons why there's still smoking in the city parks is because, in my opinion, you can't see the signs. The signs look like they're on the trunks of the trees because they're the same color as the trees. To illustrate how that could be improved, for example, is take the city of San Diego. The city of San Diego has huge red and white signs that say there's no smoking here, and fines are up to $1,000. Well,
In city parks, you're saying?
in city parks, yes. And while you can't, for a smoking violation, you can't go above $500, what the city of San Diego did is they combined their signs and said there's no littering, which you can fine up to $1,000, and no smoking, and they imply that for smoking in the park is a $1,000 fine. So what happens when Paul and I have gone to San Diego and we see people smoking in Balboa Park, we say, oh, did you know that there's a sign, the sign over there says no smoking, and the fine could be up to $1,000? Oh, thank you for reminding me that. And they put their cigarettes out, and we've done it very politely, discreetly to them, and they say, oh, really, thank you very much. It's self-enforcement. That's media. That's how you take care of it. And it's done genteelly, if you will, allow me to use that word.
Sure.
So all of that gets out, and it's done organically, if you can accept that as a possibility.
So Dara,
Does that answer?
thank you for that question, because that does help. I mean, this is probably a year or two or more out before council action, and many steps between now and then. And there's no assurance that an ordinance that would be voted on would be as extensive as this draft. It might be more focused or limited in some way. So lots of changes.
Mr. Chairman, if I might also add, with our conversations with Commissioner Baker and with the city council member, one of the questions that has come up is, does this entire ordinance as it's been proposed have to be adopted in toto? And the answer is no. It can be fragmented again, and we can say everything is acceptable except multi-unit housing, or everything is acceptable except XYZ or whatever you want. So we can break it down and move parts of it forward, and as one thing is adopted and tried and proven to be successful, then we say, okay, that worked, now let's move in another direction, and we'll adopt that and eventually get this clean air and this healthy environment that we all want here in the city of Palm Springs.
Comment? Yes, Commissioner Sprite.
Just one more thing to add about the private right of action. I was just typing in as you asked, and I found that there's a place called Change Lab that helps people write, and do you know what I'm talking about? Policies for right of action with tobacco, specifically related to this. So they're saying, hey, do you want to make sure, you can I'm saying this all wrong, but like bust people for smoking, put in a provision for right of action. So I don't know how it works legally, but there's definitely a whole group of people who are specifically writing these right of action provisions to be put into local ordinances so that they can do that.
The point is that this doesn't exist anywhere else in the municipal code, and it creates a lot of exposure. And this may be, you know, as the subcommittee, Commissioner Baker is working with our team members of our public, this may be one that may be a little bit, you know, perhaps consider whether other provisions would be more of a priority. I could think that our business community would have a lot of problems with essentially creating exposure to lawsuits where they would not have that otherwise. As I said, it's one thing for the city to impose a rule and to enforce it. That's what our code enforcement and public works are. But this allows people just to walk in and to file suits. And unfortunately, as Commissioner Baker, I know as attorneys, there are nuisance suits. And this has been a concern. So I would perhaps suggest that be put, if not necessarily aside, not necessarily a priority for initial adoption. There are other issues that we've discussed that I think might be more appropriate to focus on at this point, because once again, the city does not have this anywhere else in the municipal code, as far as I know.
Yeah, if I may, that certainly would be acceptable. And one of the things that we did put in this ordinance that Change Lab said, whoa, what about that? Is that we said instead of fines, we said fines and or community service and or successful completion of a smoking cessation program. And they said, well, we'd never heard of that before. I said, well, why not try it? They said, go for it. So that's those are some of the options in the ordinance that we put in there.
Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Gothier.
At the last meeting, I had asked whether marijuana fell under this umbrella, and the answer was a little conflicted, and I think either Commissioner Baker or you were going to look into that and come back with a definitive answer.
The answer is yes, it does fall under, it's part of the state definition of tobacco.
Other questions?
Does that include medical use of marijuana?
Yes, it does.
Just as a point of information, marijuana falls under the same guidelines as alcohol. So you can consume alcohol in the same places where you consume medical marijuana. You can't drive, you can't be out in public and consume alcohol. You can't do the same with medical marijuana.
Yeah, except if in the multi-unit housing, if somebody's in their backyard, they can have a drink,
Right.
but they couldn't smoke their pot.
Right.
Right, so there is
Yeah.
so there is that difference, absolutely. Okay. Commissioner Santora.
Just one more question. I know we're a long ways from this, but I think I was reading something recently in the PS1 blog. The question of the sovereignty of tribal land and those housing units that are on tribal land. Have you figured that piece out, or have you had any communications with tribal council?
Short answer, no. That's a very good question, though. We need to look into that. Just as a general understanding, since they are a sovereign nation and you can smoke in the casinos unimpeded, you most likely would be able to do whatever you wanted to on sovereign nation land.
The tribe has, in general, stated that they would abide by city ordinances. And so far that, as far as I know, has been the case, although with the short-term rental issue, that's the one instance where that has been called in. That's the first time I'm aware in recent years that that's been called into question. It certainly could be called into question with this topic as well. Yeah. But again, that's probably far down the road, maybe not. All right. we can certainly hear from Councilmember Coors Monday night, if he has anything he wants to say about this. Anything else we need to say tonight? All right. Thank you, Commissioner Baker. Thank you, Bob, for coming to the table. All right, we are at new business item 3. And this is an issue which Dan raised to us that has a little bit of a history to it. Dan, do you want to, you sent us in an email about this. Do you want to speak to it?
Yes, thank you. Back more than a year ago, 2015, 16, the household hazardous waste site that is on city land managed by the county. The city provided the land, and the county runs the the facility. And then they came to us asking about to put up a what's called a reuse store, which is basically contractors and builders can bring leftover materials, building materials, sinks, toilets, whatever, and put in this container, and anyone can come and pick it up for free and use on their own projects. They had asked that in order to help out with the cost, that if the city would provide up to $15,000 of the cost of pouring the concrete slab and an ADA accessible ramp to get to the store, which through various emails, Michelle Mycian, the former manager of sustainability, agreed to. However, no formal agreement was ever made with the city. So it was all done through emails and phone calls, and an agreement was made that the city would take $15,000 out of the recycling fund and pay this to the county for almost half the cost of this. So after Michelle left, the contact kind of got broken between Michelle and the county, and it just kind of got put on the back shelf for a while. Well, they finally, through Rob, Commissioner McCann had been talking with them, and they brought it up to him, who then sent me the invoice, or sent me an email and talked to me about paying, and we got the invoice, and I was aware of it, but again, since it had been a while, it had just slipped my mind too. And so now we had the invoice, and I submitted it for payment, and the city manager requested that the commission approve the purchase or the use of the money before we pay the invoice. And so that's what I'm asking tonight, is that, since we basically have agreed to pay for it, I just need a motion from someone on the commission to approve the purchase or the use of the $15,000 to pay the county.
All right, and just to clarify, David Reddy has suggested that he would approve this. He simply wants our commission to approve it as well, but he's not seeing any issue from his office.
Chair, let me speak to that. The city manager has discretionary expenditure authority up to $25,000, so he could, I believe he does want input from the commission.
Okay, okay. And the concrete walkway has already been poured, right? It's done.
Oh, yeah, it's
done.
done.
Long time.
Yeah, it's done. This, if you look on the screen, the green area is the pad for the reuse store, and the blue arrows are the ADA ramp. Yeah, it has been poured. The reuse store is now open and working. So.
Okay. All right. Okay. Is there a commissioner who wishes to make the motion as printed in our agenda? So moved from Commissioner Santora. Is there a second? Second. Second from Commissioner Baker. Is there discussion on this topic? Commissioner Friedman and then Commissioner Baker.
Just to confirm, there is money available in the current 2017-2018 fiscal year budget for this, so they wouldn't have to dip into whatever next year's budget for this.
No, it was already in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Baker.
Just a simple observation. San Diego has a similar thing, but they have a private company that runs it, so you can go in and buy old doors and windows and, I mean, things you would think have no value to me, but door handles and knobs. And I don't know if we've looked into renting the space out to a private enterprise to actually resell the materials and make money for the city.
No, we have not. It's, like I say, it's behind gates at this point, and it's only open on Saturday mornings, the same as the HHW site. And so we've attempted to get them to open more, but.
And so it would come from the recycling fund, which has several $100,000 in it, right?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Other questions? Yes.
When you say anybody can come and pick the stuff up, just
anybody?
Anybody?
It's sort of a free exchange. I
there-
bring my stuff and somebody else can come and get my stuff because they like it. Yeah.
Is there much stuff that gets brought there?
To be honest, I have not looked into it yet. I've talked with them and they say it's a success. So it's working.
Other questions? All right. All in favor of the recommending this expenditure, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Abstain. And motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're at committee and commissioner reports. And our first one is the Standing Subcommittee on Solar and Green Building, Commissioners Friedman and Goins. So Commissioner Friedman.
First, we're working with staff on the scorecard to have Palm Springs designated as a Soul Smart City. I mentioned that at our meeting last month. So I've identified actions the city has already taken that should lead us to getting a gold designation straight off the bat. And Director Verada and along with Director Flynn, Fag of Planning, and Jim Zaccaro from Code Enforcement, we have a call scheduled for the National League of Cities contact for Thursday morning to discuss next steps. And hopefully after that, we'll submit the scorecard. They'll probably review it. And then if all goes well, sometime in the near future, we'll get a nice sort of plaque of Palm Springs designated as a Soul Smart City. It was actually gratifying digging through the city code, municipal code, and various council actions to find out that we've actually already taken a large number of the measures. So so there are more things to do, but we've made a very good start on that. So it should be an easy win, and it's just more publicity for the city on that. So hopefully by our meeting next month, I'll have some more good news to report that. In the absence of Commissioner Goins, we had scheduled a G-Pro Green Building class. We were not able to get the enrollment, so that's been canceled or postponed more accurately, I'd like to think. So I'll work with Commissioner Goins at our next committee meeting to see whether that can be rescheduled for the fall. And in particular, we need to work a little bit more closely with College of the Desert, because I think that they have a ZNE program, a Zero Net Energy program, and I think if we can work with them, we might be able to get some more attendees. They obviously have a Palm Springs campus, just announced an even better one in a couple of years, but that would be our objective for that. And we're also going to be starting to work with Katie Barrows of CVAG, because we do want to have another ZNE seminar for the fall, and that's going to start hitting our to-do list probably in the next month or so as we begin planning for that.
Questions of Commissioner Friedman? Yes, Vice Chair Clark.
What are some of the items on the scorecard?
Good question, and I did not do that, did not bring it onto my my iPad. But in particular, do you have solar ready? So are all new construction required to be solar ready? The answer to that is yes. Our building code already requires that. Does the zoning code allow for solar in all areas? The answer is yes. Our zoning code already allows for that. So do you have a fast track permitting for solar? The answer to that is yes. It was required by AB 2188. So Palm Springs, and I had just joined the commission when that was happening. I worked with Commissioner Otto at the time on the ordinance that implements AB 2188. So these are the things that we've already done to make it fairly easy to do that, to get solar. And as you recall, the city council adopted the solar resolution for strongly encourage the policy of strongly encouraging solar on all new construction. So there's a long list of things. A lot of them are going into sort of the technicalities of the building code and things like that. But we've already done that. And do you have solar on city facilities? Yes. Wastewater treatment plant, convention center, animal shelter, I think Demuth Park and a couple of others. Yes, the city has been working. That was part of the Chevron things for the city to put solar in a number of the city's own facilities. So these are among the things that we've already done. If we get the solar scorecard validated, I'll be happy. Well, Daniel's already there. We'll get that circulated to everyone. I think we probably want to get it vetted with the National League of Cities. They'll look at it, make sure it meets their requirements, and then we can post the scorecard. And there's a sort of a letter, sort of a cover letter that Dr. Reddy would sign that sort of talks about all of these things.
Other questions? Thank you. The Standing Subcommittee on Waste Reduction, item 2.
All right, I got 4 items tonight. The first one that I'll just brief you on is the C&D waste ordinance, construction and demolition. We're essentially at this point, there was a draft ordinance that was submitted to city council members in December, and Councilmember Roberts had some specific concerns about the impact on the smaller businesses and the smaller contractors. So we are addressing those on April 5th. The committee members met with Dan DeGarmo, Chris Cunningham, and Gary Calhoun. And we discussed some specific changes to the ordinance that would alleviate the upfront financial obligations on the smaller contractors, provide some guidelines where they could apply for an exemption to these increased diversion requirements that come with the ordinance. And then we discussed taking the penalty for the smaller project contractors if they're out of compliance at the end of the project down to just an administrative fine. So the current status is I sent out an edited version of it with these changes. I got input from Commissioner Clark and Chris Cunningham, and the document's currently being updated to reflect their comments and my own. And I guess we're going to iterate on this. And Jay, I guess I'll be sending this to you. Okay, point number 2, reducing polystyrene takeout containers for restaurants. Councilmember Roberts also has had issues with that, and he asked us to explore it, to offer recommendations and suggestions. That was back in February. Jessica Spry has been taking the lead on this, and she's been researching ordinances in other municipalities. And on April 12th, the 3 subcommittee members attended the April meeting of the Palm Springs Hospitality Association. Commissioner Clark briefed the attendees there on potential bans on polystyrene containers and straws as well. We got extensive feedback from restaurant owners and others at this meeting. Major concerns are raised about the cost differentials between these EPS containers and recyclable alternatives. There was also a major concern expressed that if we include exemptions to this for some of the smaller restaurant owners and what have you, that it would put the non-exempt business owners at a competitive disadvantage. So it was proposed at that meeting that a joint subcommittee be formed to work with the ordinance going forward. And just today, Jessica was able to do some research, and she addressed this issue of, is there a major cost differential between the styrofoam containers and these recyclable alternatives? And what she found is not too much. The styrofoam number, I think, was about 15 cents, was it? And then the,
You know, there's all sorts of different kind of takeout options, but in general, to have a comparable styrofoam to a comparable eco-friendly, eco-friendly, biodegradable, you'd say about 15 cents per styrofoam, 30 cents for the biodegradable. So obviously it depends on your volume to determine costs, but it is, you know.
it's not major, and that's in contrast to the claim was made at this meeting that the difference was between pennies for the styrofoam to dollars for the alternatives. So there's misinformation out there, and we'll try to continue going forward with the subcommittee and try to get accurate information out as we can. Jessica, anything to add to that? Roy? Okay, third thing is recycling containers in public parks. This is where I feel like I'm on the Rachel Maddow show or something, because I've got breaking news just from today that I didn't expect to include in the report. We discussed recycle container options at our monthly meeting on March 26th. I did some research after that, and for candidate outdoor recycle containers, to get as many possible companies and take a look at what they're offering and what their containers are. I generated a PowerPoint file, and Dan has kindly put it up there on the screen. You'll see all of these candidates listed there. We've gone through them and evaluated them for whether they have features that we would like as far as identifying what the purpose of these is, and also how resistant they are to theft and vandalism, because that's been brought up by Stacy as a big issue for public parks, is that they have put these in, or their experience is that they get vandalized and they get taken away and various things. So if we go to the end of this, so here's a chart with all of our candidates, and a check mark means that it does have a feature that we like, and an X means that it doesn't. So we just went through this, and candidate C that you can see there is the third line down. That seemed to be the winner on these dimensions. Checked with Stacy Schaefer, and she agreed that candidate C is probably the best one. Our committee members have all signed up on that too. So I think that we have a down select, at least on our side, going forward. I've been in contact with that company. It's out of Pennsylvania, and they sent a quote today where for $12,995, they will be able to supply us with 35 of these containers, and that includes shipping fees. That number is not a coincidence, because I did give them my budget going in. So that's where we are with this, except for this breaking news.
And I have later news.
Yes, and you have even later news. Okay,
Yes.
good. So my breaking news is that Travis Armstrong is our point of contact on the Parks and Rec Committee, and we met with them about a month ago now and discussed this. He came back today and sent me an email trail from 2015, and it was a pretty interesting one. And Michelle Michigan was involved, and the claim back then in August of 2015 is that they got recycle containers and they deployed them in 5 or 6 public parks in Palm Springs. So we have been going around and we've been canvassing these parks again in the last month or so. The only evidence that I've seen in Ruth Hardy Park and Sunrise Park that there are any recycled containers is that there is one on the west side of the tennis courts at Ruth Hardy, and that was one of the ones that were called out as having been deployed. However, it is just a barrel. It is not a recycled container. It's a trash container with a fully wide open top, and the only thing that on it, there's a sticker that says recycle. So I don't know if that's what was deployed back in 2015 at all these other places.
There's one at Demuth as well.
There's one,
Exactly
okay.
the same thing.
Then that's probably what was done. Well, you can see that would not meet any of those criteria up here. There would be red X's all the way across. So, and also, we can't find them. I don't know where most of them are. Anyway, Roy says he's got some.
So just to follow up on your news from Parks, they did discuss it in their meeting, commission meeting this afternoon, and they would like to have us on the agenda for their meeting next month. So we can coordinate with them and find out just specifically what needs to be addressed.
We have a very tight time schedule on this, right? It's June that we have to obligate this money. So that's why we're kind of moving on this quickly.
And just to remind the commission, we have authorized you to move ahead as the commission representative, so you don't have to come back to us for any further decision.
So any further, we can interact with the city.
You
And-
can proceed with staff and others to obligate that money without further consultation with us.
So 35 containers might sound like a lot to people, but I discovered over 30 containers just in Sunrise Park alone, trash containers. And what we would like to do is to pair up as many of these as we possibly can with these recycle bins. Okay? The plastics recycling crisis, which I hope to discuss with Jeff Coors on Monday. Jessica, you might want to talk about this. My points are all about you. That on April 6th, you contacted Madison Gitlin of Global Green USA, and why don't you give us a report on what that program is?
So we've been talking in our waste reduction committee about parallel kind of programs, kind of, wouldn't this be wonderful if, and one would be, and you guys, I think some of you guys have went, but to the Hemet facility where they have an organic green waste facility that turns it into methane to gas that fleets their vehicles. And then similarly, we have this plastics issue, and how do we convert this? And there are programs that have plastics to petroleum. So we're both going on our paths kind of searching. And Dan sent us an email from an organization called Global Green, and they're actually looking to help cities who are interested in pursuing an organic waste to biofuel program. And so Jay and I met this morning to talk about it. There's a small application, and I'm not sure if we want to talk about, tonight, if you guys want to give support or not. And I don't know how these things go. I don't know the order. But anyway, this is the program, and I'm interested in looking into it. It's a couple $1,000, and it provides, we kind of know about it. Anyway, this program may or may not be helpful or not, but it's just moving us along that path to get more information about putting such a facility in town. Does that make sense?
I think,
And
let
Jay
me just
might wanna
comment,
add
I think
one
it
thing.
is always helpful for those of us who haven't studied the issues as carefully as the rest, if we can have something in writing in our packet ahead of time so that we can read and prepare and understand, that's always helpful. I mean, I'm happy for Jay to respond now too, but that just helps all of us, I think, have background.
Right. My understanding of the program was that they would provide technical assistance to help the city and city staff educate the community on the benefits of waste to energy, and also getting to the point where the city could perhaps make a decision in terms of pursuing a much larger type of project for its own facility.
All right. Okay, and that may be a conversation with staff just to get that information and then bring it back to us at some point.
Yeah, we're in a research phase right now.
Okay. All right.
Correct. And just to, from at this point, we were really just kind of debating the merits of moving forward with the application. And we thought, it could be very beneficial to find out where we stand, but by no means is there an obligation on the city at this point to, say, provide staffing, matching funds, et cetera. So we're still exploring as we move forward.
Okay, I think that's it for us.
Okay. Commissioners, questions of Rob and the group for waste reduction? All right, I have one very silly question regarding the banning of styrofoam. So what about my aluminum foil swan? You go to restaurants and they don't give you a cardboard container, they don't give you a styrofoam container, they give you your leftover lasagna in an aluminum foil swan. So would that be banned as well?
Oh, well, Mr. Fancy Diner, I think you're good.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it doesn't, but I wouldn't be, I don't think aluminum foil is
It's just a-
recyclable. Oh, it is? Okay, oh, all right, okay, good. That's good to know. You know, you just have to, it seems to me that's the most efficient way to get the food out, is wrap it in aluminum foil. All right, commissioners, other questions?
Especially if you take the aluminum foil yourself.
Yes.
And that's a possibility.
Yeah.
I see no other questions. We're going to move along. Item 3, our ad hoc subcommittee on walkability and pedestrian planning. Commissioners Wilson and Gothier.
As you may recall, last month, we circulated a statement on Laverne Way for the entire commission to review, and thank you for that. We took it to City Council on April 4th and presented that. And so I specifically presented that, and Commissioner Friedman was also there, as well as former Commissioners Yapello and Ferguson. There was also somebody from the public who spoke against Laverne Way. And then the City Council had some discussion on the item and then voted on it, and that vote was 4-1, so that motion did pass. So thank you for also disseminating that information, staff. So that was really the action of this committee over the past month. So we look forward to getting back to walkability issues, but the safe routes to school item, we don't expect to have action on that probably until June is what we're expecting based on discussions with engineering staff.
Well, and so thank you for your good work on Laverne Way and for speaking at council. Questions of Commissioners Wilson and Gothier? Item 4, wellness. Commissioner Baker, anything else from you tonight?
Apart from the smoking issue, nothing else tonight.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Friedman, water.
First, as I mentioned last night, I'm joining DWA and other community representatives on an educational tour of the Hoover Dam and the Colorado River Aqueduct next week. That's Tuesday through Thursday, and I'll report back on the May Commission meeting. The aqueduct is essentially, and the Colorado River through the aqueduct is the source of a large amount of the water that we get here in Palm Springs from DWA. Second, was at the DWA meeting this morning. They announced water conservation of 6% in March from the 2013 baseline, which is significantly below its target conservation objective of 10 to 13%, even though last month actually was fairly cool. Didn't rain, but it was fairly cool. DWA Board Conservation Committee will be meeting on April 30th because I think they understand that those numbers are trending downward. And I'll meet with DWA Conservation Outreach Manager Ashley Metzger after that to discuss what additional measures the city could take to encourage conservation. There does seem to be throughout the state, and I've been reading this, a water conservation fatigue. Everyone was very good about it a couple of years ago, but once the emergency rules were lifted last year, there's backsliding. So I think we need to work closely with DWA to see what else we can do. I'd be interested perhaps to sit down with Stacy to see, whether the city has for some reason crept up as the city is the largest or certainly one of the largest customers of DWA. I'd be interested to see whether the city's consummation of water has gone up appreciably since the restrictions were drawn down. So anyway, work to be done there, and I look forward also to, it's on the priorities list for discussion next week with council member course.
Questions of Commissioner Friedman? All right. Item 6, outreach. Commissioner Futterman, anything from you?
Just working on billboard design for World Environment Day and making connections for radio advertising. And if any of you have any contacts at the radio stations, or if you have any ideas of good radio shows that might want to interview us or have the ads on there, you know, we welcome your input. And if anyone wants to help out with this, we'd love your help. And also, I think I asked last month if any of you know of any businesses that would like to have a table. For nonprofits, it's free, and it's $50, which is a really nominal fee for for-profit businesses that would like to educate. So.
And World Environment Day is Sunday, June
3rd.
3rd.
2 to 5
2 to
p.m.
5 at the pavilion.
Yes.
Right, okay. All right, and just to mention, because it's a part of our outreach, the last farmer's market at the Camelot parking lot is in May. According to the website, they will move to the pavilion in June.
Correct.
So we would have a sustainability table the first Saturday of May. I think that responsibility has mostly been borne by Vice Chair Clark and Commissioner Spry and Commissioner Futterman and myself for just a little bit. So I encourage you, when that email comes out, if you'd like to be there and interact with the public. You actually do meet some interesting folks, and so if you're interested in doing that. And I think my question for you is, would we continue that during the summer months at the pavilion, or would we wait and reinitiate our sustainability table perhaps in the fall when it's back in a larger setting at the Camelot?
I would say at least for June 2nd, which is the Saturday that it moves indoors, and the next day is the event in the same space, that we need a table there. So it would be great to have that, and we can see how it feels to be inside. It would only be actually for July, because we are not in session in August.
Okay.
Right? So if we could have the interest, I think it would be great to meet in July as well,
Okay.
if anyone has.
And I think I think what happened last month was it was somewhat determined by availability. So we closed early because there simply wasn't commissioner staffing available. So we do what we can do. Yes, Dara.
So I spoke to my garden club about having a booth at the World Environment Day, and they said they'd be interested in that. I just know that it's close. It's 2 days before graduation, so, and we have a completely, like, our garden club is completely full of seniors. So, like, we don't have juniors or sophomores. So I know I can commit to that, but I will have to see if anyone else can.
Well, it might be a good time for you to recruit some. Yes.
Any questions for Commissioner Futterman?
I'd just like to add that there has been a lot of interest in the Milkweed for Monarch projects at our booth. So I think Christine and I would like to continue, at the farmers market as long as we can.
And I think we disseminated some information about community gardens. We have our bike maps. So it's, and certainly as the warmer weather moves on, you are more likely to encounter just Palm Springs residents versus our winter short-term residents. So you get folks who are learning about our work who are permanent residents, which is also very helpful as well. The Canadians seem to really like what we're doing. They're just not here year-round. So,
Roy, we would welcome you and Christine to have a Milkweed for Monarchs at World Environment Day. It would be a great time to come educate people. We have the master gardeners, so maybe, we're going to have them in the breezeway where the music won't get in the way of education. So
I'll speak to Christine.
Okay.
Dara.
Just another question. So we have T-shirts to sell. Would that mean that we would have to put a down payment of $50 for a booth? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we are at Commissioner comments. Any comments from that you were not able to say under another agenda item? Just to alert you, this is my last term as a commissioner on the Sustainability Commission. And so certainly last year, and I'm not sure why we did this, I think we had several new commissioners, but we postponed elections of officers until September. But I think it would probably make sense for you to have elections at your first meeting in July. And there would be at least one new commissioner. Hopefully, council will have moved and appointed someone in June so that you'd have a new seated commissioner. But I won't be here in July unless I'm out there. Just to alert you, if you would like to think about the possibility of a chair role or vice chair role, you could do that. And those elections would be in July. Any other comments? Well, in that case, we'll see all of you again in less than a week. I'm going to give you an extra 30 minutes of your life tonight so that you will be ready to see everyone next Monday night at 5 o'clock at the Wellwood Library. Is there a motion for adjournment? Commissioner Gauthier, second by Commissioner Santora. All in favor say yes?
Yes.
And we are adjourned. Thank you very much.